Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Today we're going to be creating a Valentine's Day mailbox. We're going to be using the Birdsong Trimmings 3 and Laurel Moulds from IOD. We're also going to be using IOD's Rose Chintz Paint Inlay and Jovi Air Dry Clay. You can find a full product list in the description of this video and all your crafting needs on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Let's get started. I got this sweet little Christmas mailbox at the After Christmas sales on sale, and I thought it would be perfect for today's project. After cleaning the mailbox with Dixie Belle's White Lightning and rinsing off the cleaner, I'm applying 2 coats of Dixie Belle's Slick Stick. This is a bonding primer which is going to help my paint stick to the metal surface. I'm applying my Slick Stick primer in a stippling motion. This helps with coverage and it also helps the paint to adhere later. Unfortunately, this mailbox had embossed details, so I knew I was going to have to find a way to hide them. So I added some of Dixie Belle's texture additive sea spray to some Sawmill gravy chalk mineral paint, and I'm stippling and applying the sea spray over the top of the entire mailbox. On the second coat of the sea spray, I could really see that the texture additive was helping me disguise the embossed details, and that's all we need. We don't need it to completely cover it. So I've applied it over the whole thing, and then once that's dry, I am using a 220 grit sandpaper to smooth off the rough edges. I decided that the Sawmill gravy wasn't quite the colour that I wanted, so I'm going over the top of my dry sea spray with Fluff chalk mineral paint. This is a brighter white with a hint of grey. Next, I'm going to be using IOD's Rose Chintz Paint Inlay. This is a really beautiful repeating pattern. The roses look vintage. It's a really beautiful sort of cottagey French country design. I'm going to take out 1 sheet from this design, and I've already measured it, and I can tell that this sheet is going to be enough to cover the mailbox. So next I'm going to line up the paper with the mailbox side that has the little flag. I'm going to have to measure that out and to see where that's going to impact the paper. And then I'm going to take some scissors and I'm going to cut a little slit along the paint inlay so that we can tuck the paper in behind it. Once I've made my cut, I'm going to arrange the paper just to make sure that I have the right width cut. I'm then going to lift up the bottom part of the paint inlay and I'm going to start applying my paint. I've already got 1 coat down of the Fluff chalk mineral paint that is dry. This coat is going to be the one that the paint inlay sits in that's wet. So you have to use wet paint with this or the design will not transfer. You can also use some sort of a clear coat or top coat. So I'm going to work in sections so that the paint doesn't dry too quickly and I have a little bit more control. You want to be generous here, but not too over the top, but you definitely need enough for that inlay to transfer the paint into. So next I'm going to press the inlay down into the wet paint, and because this is a textured surface, I'm going to spend a little bit of time pressing the design down onto the surface and just gently running my fingers over the top to make sure that it's made good contact with the wet paint. I'm then going to repeat the same process. I'm lifting up part of the paint inlay. I'm then going to apply some more paint and I'm then going to press the inlay down into the wet paint. And I'm going to repeat this process until I have the whole mailbox covered. As I'm pressing down, I'm also making sure that the design is going where I want to. You can usually get 2 or 3 uses out of your paint inlays, so make sure you always save them after using them and let them dry. You will notice, however, that the design does get gradually more faded. Let me know in the comments if you've tried IOD's paint inlays and what project you used it on. Once I've finished applying my paint inlay, I'm going to let it dry for 30 minutes to an hour. I'm then going to use my water mister to wet the inlay again, and you'll notice that it's gone from faded to bright again. And I'm also going to use a damp cloth to sponge off the excess. I'm going to allow the water to sit for about 60 seconds so it has a chance to soak into the pages, and then I am going to look at removing it in sections. Next, I'm going to very carefully start in one area and I'm going to gently lift the inlay away. If I feel any resistance, I am going to grab my mister again and I'm going to mist the inlay a little bit more just to help it release, because I don't want to pull up my paint that I've already got sitting there, and that can happen sometimes. So this is already looking really lovely. I love the faded sort of chippy look that these inlays provide. If you want a perfect design, it's probably not the best product. You're probably best to stick with transfers, but I find this look really, really beautiful and it is perfect for the look that I'm going for. I noticed that the other side had already started to dry a bit too much, so I have misted it again so that I can be sure that I'm lifting the paint inlay up without taking any of my paint up. And I'm actually going to keep going, and very gently I'm actually pulling from the other side now. I'll then set my paint inlay off to one side to dry and I'll get another use out of it. I'm then going to take my 50% clear coat that's mixed with 50% water in a spray bottle, and I'm going to spray that clear coat mixture over my paint inlay. This is going to seal the inlay without me smearing. If I go in there with a brush, I'm more likely to smear the paint. Next, we're going to start adding some molds. So I've grabbed my Trimmings 3 mold and I'm just making one of the thinner designs there using Jovi Air Dry Clay, and I'm working the clay mixture into it and then placing it on the mailbox to see how much I'm going to need. So I've worked out that I'm going to have to cast 3 lots of that same trimmings there to have borders on either side of the mailbox. I'm going to lay part of that trim on either side and then break the trim apart to see how much I need, and then I'm going to use a strong wood glue to glue the molds onto the mailbox. Next, I'm going to cast one of the smaller flying birds from the birdsong mold using Jovi Air Dry Clay, and also 2 of the thinner laurels from the Laurel mold. You can see I am dusting the mold with cornstarch. That's just going to help to make sure that my clay doesn't stick. I'm then starting to position my molds to work out how much I'm going to need, and then once I have all of my molds cast, I'm using a strong wood glue to glue the castings down. So I left this to dry overnight, and when I came back, you'll see here, I had quite a bit of shrinkage. I didn't realize how much the clay would shrink and it left 2 big gaps there. So I'm going to show you how I fixed this problem. Now on the left, the glue hadn't quite set. I guess it was a bit cool overnight, so it hadn't quite set, so I'm just using a little spatula there to carefully work the molds up off the surface. I figured that if I could get it up without breaking it, then I would just shift the position of the casting there and I would glue it into place a little bit higher to hide that gap. So that's what we're going to do with this part. So I'm just adding a little bit more glue there, and that should fix the problem on that side for the most part. And on the other side, however, the gap wasn't quite as big, so you'll see in a moment I'm going to take a little bit more clay. I'm going to cast a little bit of the Trimmings mold there, and I'm going to just work it approximately into the spot. It's not going to be perfect, but again, I'm not going for perfect here. This is quite a shabby chic sort of a look project. So you can see I'm just wiping off the excess clay there. It's actually managed to hide the gap pretty well. And I am actually going to add just a little bit more clay on the left hand side as well, where the gaps are a little bit more obvious. And this is definitely something you can do if you find that your molds have shrunk too much. I'm then going to seal my castings with Dixie Belle's Gloss Clear Coat. I quite like the colour of the clay, so I didn't feel the need to add any more paint. And then I'm going to seal the entire mailbox, so the molds are going to get 2 coats of clear coat. This is definitely going to help in the next step. Next, we're going to grab some of Dixie Belle's Au Naturel Voodoo Gel Stain, and I'm applying it to the molds to start off with, and you can see I'm adding it, but then I'm using a paper towel and also a baby wipe to wipe off the excess so that we can see hints of the white clay. So I'm applying it to the center molds and the molds at either end of the mailbox. The mailbox still looked a little bit too new for my liking. I love a vintage look, so I'm taking more of that stain and I'm actually applying it to the entire mailbox. You can see I'm wiping quite a bit off though. What I'm wanting is for the stain to sort of work its way into the texture that we created using the sea spray. This is going to give it that really lovely vintagey sort of shabby look. I'm also loving the texture that was left behind from the paint inlays, and I again feel that this really adds to the weathered look. I'm also adding the same stain to either end of the mailbox. So I loved where this was heading, but I did decide that I wanted to go a little bit darker, so I have grabbed Voodoo Gel Stain in Tobacco Road. This is a lovely warm brown, and I'm repeating the same processes that I did with the first stain. I'm applying it to the molds and using a wet wipe to wipe back the excess. And again, this really added to that vintage look that I was going for. If you're not a fan of a weathered look, you could definitely leave out adding the stains to your project. The beauty of adding the clear coat first is that it's really giving me a lot of freedom to wipe back as much or as little stain as I want. When the stain is dry, I am using some of Dixie Belle's Gold Gilding Wax on the casting details. I'm just running my finger along the details. I've only got a little bit of the product on there, and this is definitely a step that you want to leave until last. And you can see there I also added it to the little flag. And here's our finished Valentine's Day mailbox. I didn't end up doing anything with the inside of the mailbox because it was already a lovely red, which is perfect for Valentine's Day. I'm really happy with this project. I love the texture that the sea spray created and the vintage look of the paint inlay with the molds, and I think that the stains that I used really add to that overall weathered look. Let me know what you think of this project in the comments, and please hit that like button if you like it. If you haven't already, I would really appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our projects. You can find the products used on today's video on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.